Rapiwa Madzena from our Money Desk joins us in studio now. Rapiwa, now yesterday, a state insurer, Sasria, said that should the grid collapse, and we're told this is highly unlikely, but should the grid collapse and it leads to sort of riots, etc., they will not be responsible for any insurance claims. Today, a different story.
Yeah, well, they're basically changing the date on which it will be implemented and a couple of other details. But we do have the CEO standing by, Sally, and you will remember that Sasria had to pay about 32 billion rand in claims following the 2021 July riots. Sasria had told its clients, which include malls and state institutions, exactly that. So should protests break out and property damaged when the grid fails, it won't be able to cover them. Yesterday, it withdrew that circular, and that policy was to have kicked in in June rather, and that's not going to happen. Let's talk to
The main reason is that we have to consult with the various insurance companies that sell our policies. So in terms of implementing this change, they will have to change certain things on their systems, and that will require time. So we've had to back off mainly because of that. So that's the first reason. The second other reason is that there are other stakeholders that we need to consult further around this development. In particular, our shareholder, the National Treasury. We have to have an engagement with them, which will sort of indicate to us whether we could have funds to pay for claims that could arise out of a complete, and I want to emphasize this, a complete grid failure.
So tell us then how the reinsurers work here, because they were the ones, and you indicated in your circular, that asked you to stay away from load shedding claims. And now you're saying you're going to be engaging the shareholder as well as the insurance companies, including the reinsurance and what they had communicated to you. How are those conversations going to come together?
Yes, so Sasria's reinsurance arrangements start in each year on the 1st of April. So during the course of March, we had negotiations with the global reinsurers. I met at least 40 of those, and of those 40, 22 agreed to reinsure Sasria. We get now a premium income of 4.6 billion rands, and out of that 4.6 billion rands, we pay close to 600 million rands on reinsurance cost. So reinsurance covers us for a significant event like we had in July 2021. The current arrangement will only cover us up to about 6 billion rand. Out of those reinsurance companies, one indicated that they will not be able to provide us with grid cover for complete grid failure. And now you can imagine in our position, given the premiums that we are charging our customers, which did not really anticipate a scenario where we could have a complete grid failure. So we've been faced with this particular situation where we have to consider to exclude protests that arise from a grid failure in our policies.
And it's a difficult decision, no doubt, that you would have to make. So let's talk about Sasria's financial health then. You alluded to it briefly earlier. You had already been to Parliament earlier this year warning about the risks associated with load shedding and, of course, asking for government to help replenish your reserves. Where are your reserves standing at the moment, and have you received that support?
We are in continuous engagement with government. We have indicated to them way back in October last year, and you'll have seen a response from the Minister of Finance to Parliament in this regard, where we had indicated various scenarios of if a claim is 5 billion rand, how much state support would we get? And if a claim is 10 billion rand, how much state support we will get? Having said all of that, Sasria to pay ordinary claims. I mean, every day we're dealing with the protests in South Africa that lead to damages, just ordinary protests in this particular context. And we pay those claims. We've got liquidity. We've got the necessary capital. In fact, we are no longer in the watch list of the South African Reserve Bank, which is our prudential authority. So we are on solid ground insofar as ordinary businesses that were designed to cover. Now, complete grid failure introduces a new dimension and a new risk to us. Think of it this way. For instance, if you recall how South Africans responded to a COVID situation where they had to be locked down, we believe in the unlikely event, which is remote in our view, that we have a complete grid failure, we will have certain measures that are going to be taken by state, and those will include a lockdown as well.
And so with that, before we move on, an exact number to indicate that liquidity, are you able to share that with us? Or are you comfortable with just saying we're liquid and we're good to deal with everyday issues?
Look, let me put it this way. I mean, currently we are sitting with the net reserves close to 8 billion rands. So let me tell South Africans that in an ordinary year, Sasria's claims will be between 25 to 30% of our premium, which is 4.6 billion. So we are quite comfortable to handle those particular claims. I mean, we've taken certain measures to bolster our reserves. Amongst them, we reduced, for instance, the commission that we pay to our agents who sell our policy so that we can have more money in an event of a claim. So, as I'm saying, we are quite comfortable in that particular space. It's just that we have to look forward and think ahead and say, what will be the consequences of a complete grid failure in a South African context? And we have July 2021 as a benchmark for that particular exercise.
Yeah, 32 billion rand, no small change indeed. So with this now, how would Sasria be able to gauge if a claim is directly linked to the national grid collapse? What investigative measures would you have put in place to make sure that the assessment will prove that this is a grid collapse claim or it's not?
Okay. All right, look at it this way. The one positive thing out of that announcement, which is not widely covered, is that we've come out and said we will cover load shedding for one. All right. So in an event of a load shedding, and as you know, Eskom publishes a program as to which areas are going to be affected with load shedding at what particular time. So in an event where there is a complete grid failure, we'll know which areas were scheduled for load shedding, which is covered. Then you go to where then there is a complete grid failure. We'll have to do an assessment for each particular case and look at its merits. If, for instance, the protest is totally unrelated to grid failure, like let's say people are protesting around water shortages, other service delivery unrest that we have seen that is fairly common these days in our country, those who would pay. But here is one appeal that I would like to make to our fellow South Africans at this particular point, is that as much as we've got a legitimate right to protest, we strongly discourage them from destroying property during a protest, because that's what is giving us problems. So I think South Africans, if we do not destroy, and I do believe that Eskom and private sector will, in a number of years, resolve the generation challenges that we are faced with.
A final thought from you, Mpumi. You have indicated that there has been pressure from your reinsurers to avoid this kind of claim. But after your engagements with the insurance companies you work with, and they decide that this is not possible for their clients, what is it that you're going to do as Sasria in terms of an ultimate decision? Will this stand and you'll find a date in which to implement it, or are you going to listen to your insurance partners as well as their clients?
Look, let me make it clear. Those insurance companies are currently implementing this grid failure cover for their existing clients. So, for instance, in your motor policy or your household policy, as it stands today, if you've got a claim due to grid failure, it is likely to be denied. So all the 65 plus insurance companies in South Africa are implementing this. So Sasria is not unique in that regard. So that's not really the discussion. The discussion is about how are we going to implement it? When are we going to implement it? We have to give them a certain period of time. I was hoping this will not happen. Sorry, yeah.
Yes, load shedding, it is understandable. I think South Africans will understand.
It's our energy saving measures. Basically, if I don't move in my chair for more than 15 minutes, then it assumes I'm not in the room.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So basically, the challenge is around how much time do they need for us, for them to implement this particular grid failure. Let me emphasize this. I think as South Africans, we need not panic around it. I keep on reminding them that we do cover, one, load shedding, and secondly, the likelihood of complete grid failure in South Africa is rather remote at this point in time.
Thank you very much for that clarity. And of course, we will keep touching base with you as developments around our energy crisis continue to develop. That is Mpumi Tyikwe, who is the Sasria CEO, joining us to clarify what exactly it meant when it said that it will not be covering any claims that are related to a complete grid failure. Of course, he does say that they follow the load shedding schedule quite close. So those in areas that were scheduled for load shedding are a different story from those who would have been plunged into complete darkness as a result of a grid failure.